A co-worker angrily yelled at me, accusing me of leaving food to rot in the shed refrigerator. It was my very first day at the job, and I hadn't even had the chance to unpack my belongings yet. One time, while working at the front desk of a gym, a woman came up to complain about the number of geese outside the building. She insisted that they should have migrated south by that time of year and demanded that we take action to resolve the issue. When I worked for the NHS, I was once drawn into an investigation about feces on the floor at a community hospital. A patient had missed the toilet, leaving the mess steaming on the floor. The nurse said she was too busy to deal with it and suggested calling the cleaner. The cleaner refused, stating it was biological waste and outside their responsibilities. I went back to the nurse, who suggested finding a healthcare assistant. The healthcare assistant also declined, saying they weren't signed off on infection control procedures. This was then escalated to the sister in charge, who decided the student nurse should handle it. The student nurse tried but ended up vomiting and running out in tears. I was in the building at the time, heard all the fuss, and eventually cleaned it up myself. However, I got reported afterward because I was a manager and not clinical staff. While working as a sign language interpreter in a classroom, I encountered a teacher's aide who deliberately stood in the way, blocking the student's view of me. When I politely asked her to move, she revealed that she was doing it on purpose to prevent the student from relying on me too much. Let me share a memorable incident. I work in a large factory, and we had an employee in his late 30s who apparently never learned how to use a urinal correctly. Multiple people complained about feeling uncomfortable in the restroom because he would completely drop his pants and underwear to his ankles, lift his shirt under his chin, place his hands on his hips, and urinate into the urinal like a toddler. Despite years of using public restrooms, he had never noticed that he was the only one doing this. It was one of the most awkward conversations I've ever had to have with an adult, but fortunately he stopped after we spoke to him. My boss once pulled me aside to say, "It's been noticed that you only work the hours you're scheduled for and no more." I explained that I frequently stayed back when necessary to complete tasks, but added that if they wanted me to work additional hours regularly, I would need to be compensated for the extra time. After that conversation, I heard nothing further on the matter. I've already done more than my fair share of unpaid overtime and decided I wouldn't do it anymore. I used to work in HR for a non-profit organization that employed legally blind individuals as part of its mission. One day, two employees got into a fight. One was partially sighted, and the other was completely blind and swinging his cane. There were 4 witnesses to the incident, but they were all totally blind and unable to provide details about what had occurred. A co-worker once tried to demonstrate that slipping on a banana peel couldn't actually result in injuries. To prove his point, he stepped on a banana peel, slipped, and hurt himself. I refused to document the incident as it felt too absurd to be taken seriously. A colleague once refused to return a company truck, effectively holding it hostage until my boss paid him $100 that he was owed from a paycheck. Afterward, he sent her the truck's location via a Google Maps pin, showing that it was parked in the middle of downtown. My boss made fun of a woman for calling in sick to work, doing so in front of everyone present. The woman had ovarian cancer. I quit my job within 10 seconds of witnessing that. While working in a Muslim country, I had a colleague who constantly pressured me to join him in prayer. I tried to explain as politely as possible that I was an atheist and felt uncomfortable being asked to pray. He later reported me to HR, claiming I was disrupting workplace harmony with anti-religious sentiment, and I received a formal warning. The worst experience I had was when I asked for a Friday off to attend my wife's grandmother's funeral. We were in the middle of a major deadline crunch, but my wife was deeply affected by the loss, and I felt I needed to support her. I'd been averaging over 50 hours per week at the firm, often working weekends and holidays as well. I didn't think it was an unreasonable request. Still, I felt bad about leaving the team short-handed. So, on the day of the funeral, I decided to go into the office early to finish one critical task that no one else could handle. Dressed in my funeral suit, I completed the task and was about to leave when my boss saw me. He walked over and sarcastically said, "So, I guess they cancelled the funeral, huh?" That moment was the last straw for me. My boss implemented a morale-boosting game with specific rules, such as addressing co-workers by assigned nicknames or challenging them to rock, paper, scissors. If someone broke a rule or lost in the game, they were required to do 10 push-ups. Initially, it seemed like harmless fun. One afternoon, however, I didn't feel like doing push-ups after losing, and my co-workers jokingly teased me about it. Despite the playful nature of it, my boss took issue with my refusal and fired me the very next day. This happened while I was working as a traveler in New Zealand, so it wasn't a devastating loss, but it still bothers me that I was fired over declining to play a silly game.